It is done. After 22 years of waiting, 22 years of near misses, 22 years of heartbreak and hope and frustrated brilliance, Arsenal Football Club are Premier League champions again. Let that sink in for a moment. Not almost champions, not second place, not the team that came close and fell away in March. Champions, confirmed, official, sealed on a Tuesday night while Manchester City dropped points at Bournemouth and the whole of North London erupted into something that has not been seen since 2004. The night of May 19th, 2026 will be remembered forever by every single person who supports this football club. And tonight on this channel, we are going to go through every single piece of this story, every reaction, every quote, every detail, because a moment this big deserves to be understood fully, not just celebrated quickly. We're going to cover what the players said, what the managers said, what the legends said, what the records show. We are going to build the complete picture of how this Arsenal team finally crossed the line. So stay with me all the way through this video because every section of tonight's analysis is important. This is not a short story. This is a historic one. Before we get into the reactions and the details, it is worth pausing for just one moment to understand what was truly at stake here. This Arsenal squad has been building toward this moment for several years. Season after season, the pressure grew heavier. The jokes from rival supporters became louder. The narrative around Arsenal being bottlers, around Mikel Arteta being unable to deliver the big moment, around this generation of players being talented but ultimately short of the mental strength required to win a league title, all of that noise was building to a crescendo. Had Arsenal failed this season, had they come close again and then collapsed, the consequences would have been enormous, not just for the club's reputation, but for the belief of the players themselves, for Arteta's position, for the whole project that has been assembled so carefully over the last several years. The reality is that this Arsenal team had everything to prove. And on this night, they proved every single thing that needed proving. And if you want this kind of deep and detailed analysis, every single time a major Arsenal story breaks, then please hit that subscribe button right now and join the Melissa Arsenal analyst community. Because nights like this deserve proper analysis, and that is exactly what this channel delivers every single time. Now let us go through this story piece by piece. The official confirmation. The first thing to process is the image that Arsenal themselves put out on their official social media account. The post read, and I want you to hear these exact words clearly. Good morning from your Premier League champions. That is it. Clean, simple, confident. No excessive words needed. Arsenal Football Club, Premier League champions, sending that message to the world on the morning after confirmation. Now, here is what you really need to understand about that post. The tone is everything. There is no desperation in it. There is no wild celebration language. It is composed. It is assured. It is the tone of a club that knows exactly who they are and exactly what they have achieved. That kind of composed confidence does not come from nowhere. It comes from a culture that has been built deliberately and carefully over a number of years. The numbers attached to that post tell their own story as well. Over 60,000 likes, nearly 19,000 retweets, 471,000 impressions. The reach of that single post tells you the scale of global interest in this Arsenal title win. This is not just a story for North London. This is a worldwide football story. The table and the margin. Let us look at where Arsenal finished relative to Manchester City, because the gap matters. The confirmed standings show Arsenal on 82 points after 37 games played. Manchester City sit on 78 points, also after 37 games. Both clubs have a goal difference of plus 43. The points gap is 4 points with one game remaining. Now, let me break this down for you because the margin is significant. Arsenal did not sneak this title. They did not win it on goal difference or by a single point on the final day. They built a lead and they maintained it. 4 points clear of a Manchester City side that has dominated English football for years. That is a statement result. That is not fortune. That is quality sustained across an entire season. Pep Guardiola himself congratulated Arsenal through the official Premier League account, and his words were notable. He said, on behalf of Manchester City, congratulations to Arsenal, Mikel and his staff. All the players and fans, they deserve it. Those are gracious words from a man who has beaten Arsenal to the title multiple times in recent seasons. When the manager of the most dominant club in English football for the past decade tells you that you deserve the title, that means something real. Guardiola understands better than almost anyone what it takes to win a Premier League season. His acknowledgement carries genuine weight. How the title was won, the Bournemouth factor, Now let us talk about exactly how this confirmation happened, because the mechanism of Arsenal's title win is a fascinating detail. It was not Arsenal winning a game themselves that confirmed the championship. It was Manchester City dropping points at Bournemouth. And the player who became the unlikely hero of this moment was Bournemouth's own Eli Junior Krupi, whose goal against Manchester City effectively handed Arsenal the title. What Krupi said after that goal is one of the most thoughtful and humble reactions I have heard from a player in a situation like this. His words were, that goal belongs to Arsenal's pressure, Arsenal's mentality, Arsenal's season. He then went further. He said, I was just the final touch. It felt like I tapped in the final chapter of something they wrote. Now, here is how I see this. Krupi was not claiming credit. He was acknowledging that what Arsenal built over an entire season created the conditions for that moment to matter. The pressure that Arsenal applied week after week, the points they accumulated, the relentlessness of their campaign, that is what made his goal decisive. He understood that. And the way he expressed it shows a football intelligence that goes beyond the moment itself. That goal and Krupi's humble response to it will be remembered as one of the defining footnotes of this title-winning season. Carlo Ancelotti, the man who saw this coming. Now, this is the section of tonight's analysis that I find particularly fascinating. And I want you to pay close attention here, because this story connects December of 2025 directly to what happened tonight. Back in December of 2025, Carlo Ancelotti sat down with Ali McCoist for a conversation that was shared on TNT Sports. At that point, the Premier League season was in its early stages. The title race was still wide open. And Ancelotti, speaking as the Brazil national team coach and one of the most decorated managers in the history of world football, was asked who he thought would win the Premier League. His answer was Arsenal. He said, I think Arsenal started really well. They built a fantastic team, a really solid team. And then he said something that became one of the most shared quotes in Arsenal circles for months afterward. He said, they will win the Premier League this season. Now, here is what this really means when you connect it to tonight. Ancelotti did not say this as an Arsenal supporter in the traditional sense. He explained his position honestly. He said he supports Arsenal because of Gabriel, his Brazilian defender. He supports Tottenham because of Richarlison. He follows the Brazilian players across different clubs. But when asked to specifically predict the Premier League winner, he did not hedge. He did not give a diplomatic non-answer. He said Arsenal. Let me break this down for you, because this carries real weight. Carlo Ancelotti has won the Champions League 4 times as a manager. He has won league titles in Italy, England, France, Germany and Spain. When a man with that record looks at a football team and says they will win the title, he is not guessing. He is reading the evidence in front of him. He is applying decades of elite-level football knowledge to what he sees on the pitch. And what he saw in December of 2025 was a team that was solid enough, well-structured enough, and mentally strong enough to go all the way. Now, here is the part most people are missing in this story. Ancelotti knew Arsenal from a deeply personal and painful experience. In the Champions League quarter-finals the previous season, Arsenal beat his Real Madrid side 5-1 across 2 legs, 5-1. That is a humbling result for any club, let alone the most successful club in Champions League history. And Ancelotti absorbed that result and drew a conclusion from it. The conclusion was not that Arsenal got lucky. The conclusion was that Arsenal are genuinely elite. When you lose 5-1 to a team across 2 legs, you either dismiss it as an aberration or you accept the evidence. Ancelotti accepted the evidence. He said these players built something special, and tonight, that something special delivered the Premier League title. Let me give you my honest take on this. The fact that Ancelotti publicly backed Arsenal in December, when the season was still at match day 15, and was proven completely correct by May, is not just a satisfying piece of football trivia. It is a data point about how this Arsenal team was perceived at the highest levels of world football. The people who compete at the top of this game, the managers who have won everything there is to win, they could already see what Arsenal were becoming. Ancelotti saw it. He said it out loud. And tonight, 6 months later, he has been proven right in the most complete way possible. There is also a human element to this story that deserves attention. Ancelotti mentioned Gabriel specifically when explaining his connection to Arsenal. Gabriel Magalhaes has become one of Brazil's most important players under Ancelotti's management of the national team. The relationship between the Brazil coach and his Arsenal defender meant that Ancelotti was watching Arsenal's season more closely than a neutral observer might. He was tracking Gabriel's performances week by week. He was watching how Arsenal played, how they defended, how they built from the back. And through that watching, he reached his conclusion. Arsenal were going to be champions. Here is my take on what is really going on in this narrative. The Ancelotti prediction is not just a nice story to tell. It is evidence that this Arsenal title was not an accident or a surprise to those who were watching carefully. It was the natural conclusion of a building process that football's greatest minds could already see was heading somewhere special. Tonight, the whole world can see what Ancelotti saw back in December. Arsenal Football Club are Premier League champions. And one of the greatest managers in the history of the game called it months before anyone else wanted to believe it. Mikel Arteta and the Champions League mindset. Now, here is where the story becomes even more extraordinary, because while the rest of the football world was still processing Arsenal's Premier League title win, Mikel Arteta was already looking forward. His public statement after the confirmation was remarkable in its focus. He said, "I am happy we have won that, but now it is time for full focus on the game on the 30th. The final." And then he said the words that should send a shiver down the spine of every Arsenal supporter. He said, "All we need now is to win the Champions League." Let me put this in plain terms for you. Arsenal are not just Premier League champions. They are in the Champions League final. The final is scheduled for May 30th. And Arteta, even in the moment of winning the league, is already mentally inside the preparation for that final. This is the mentality of a genuine elite manager. He allowed himself and his squad one moment of happiness and then immediately redirected the energy toward the next target. That is not cold. That is not dismissive of what they achieved. That is championship thinking. That is how the greatest managers in the world operate. And Arteta is demonstrating it in real time. The trophy parade, which we will cover later in this analysis, is planned for Sunday, May 31st. That is the day after the Champions League final. The detail there tells you everything. Arsenal are planning this parade with the possibility of celebrating not one, but 2 trophies on that day. The ambition in this club right now is absolutely extraordinary. The trophy parade details. Let us go through the parade information that has been confirmed, because the details matter. Arsenal are set to hold their Premier League trophy parade on Sunday, May 31st, 2026. That is one day after the Champions League final against Paris Saint-Germain. The start time and the exact route have not yet been fully confirmed, but the current plan is for the parade to begin at the Emirates Stadium and then move through familiar North London streets. The route is expected to include Drayton Park, Highbury Grove and Upper Street before returning to the stadium. Now, here is the part most people are missing. If Arsenal complete a historic double in the Champions League final in Budapest, both trophies will be shown during the parade. If they do not win the final, the parade will still go ahead with the Premier League title alone. Final timings are expected to be announced after the Champions League final itself. The phrase, "a historic double in Budapest," captures the scale of what this Arsenal season could become. We are not talking about a good season or a successful season. We are potentially talking about one of the greatest seasons in Arsenal's entire history. Premier League champions and Champions League winners in the same year. If Arteta's team achieve that, this generation of players will be spoken about forever. Bukayo Saka and the 22-year message. Now let us talk about one of the most emotional and powerful statements of this entire night, because Bukayo Saka delivered something truly special. Saka, speaking on Urian Timber's Instagram in the immediate aftermath of the confirmation, directed his message at every person who has doubted this Arsenal team. His words were, "Light that up," referring to the Premier League trophy, light at Arsenal's training ground. Let me tell you something. 22 years they were laughing, they were joking. They are not laughing anymore. It is going to be shining. It is going to be shining bright. Now let me walk you through this step by step, because the detail about the training ground light is something that needs explaining fully. At Arsenal's training facility, known as the Sobha Realty Centre, there is a Premier League title displayed as part of the building's design. That light or display has been sitting there waiting to be switched on for the entire time since the Invincibles won the league back in 2004. Every single day that players and staff walked past that symbol, it was a reminder of what had not yet been achieved. Saka knows that history. He grew up as an Arsenal player during those 22 years of waiting. And now, at an age where many players would not yet have experienced a full career, he has delivered on the promise he made to Arsenal supporters back in 2021, when as a young player he told fans they deserved better. The numbers behind Saka's contribution this season are important to state clearly. 7 goals and 7 assists in the Premier League. And it was his cross that set up the goal against Burnley, converted by Kai Havertz, which ultimately proved to be the goal that won Arsenal the title. 7 goals, 7 assists, and the title-winning assist. That is the output of a world-class player in a championship season, Max Dowman, and the youngest ever record. One of the most extraordinary individual stories of this title win involves a player who is barely known outside of Arsenal's academy circles, Max Dowman. Transfer journalist Fabrizio Romano confirmed the record. Max Dowman has become the youngest Premier League winner ever. He is 16 years and 139 days old. Read that again, 16 years and 139 days old. Here is my take on what is really going on here. This young man is now part of Premier League history. Before he has even fully established himself as a first-team presence, before the football world has had a chance to properly evaluate his talent, his name is in the record books as the youngest person ever to win the Premier League. This tells us something important about this Arsenal squad, beyond just the 11 players who start matches. The culture of this club reaches all the way through the academy. Young players are being integrated into the first-team environment. They are training with champions. They are absorbing the mentality that Arteta has built. And now one of them has a Premier League winner's medal before his 17th birthday. That is a statement about the health of this entire football club from top to bottom. Eberechi Eze and the dream come true. Now let us talk about Eberechi Eze, because his reaction to this title win is one of the most human and touching stories of this entire night. Eze said, "This is a dream come true. Something I dreamed about since I was 13 years old." He then admitted that there were moments when he genuinely doubted the dream would ever become reality. He said, "At some point I felt like it would never happen. But here is the part that makes his story remarkable." He said, "Then in the very year it was supposed to happen, I signed for the club and achieved my dream in that same season." And then his final words, which I think deserve to be heard clearly, he said, "How will I thank my Lord? Never give up on your dream." Now, here is how I see this. Eze joined Arsenal this season. In his very first season with the club, they win the Premier League. That is a story of timing, of belief, of the football journey, rewarding persistence. He doubted it would happen. He kept going. He signed for the club he had dreamed about since childhood. And in his first year, he is a champion. Football produces these stories occasionally. When they align the way Eze's story has aligned, they become part of the mythology of a title-winning season. His voice, his honesty about doubt and faith will be remembered as part of the story of how Arsenal won this league. Ian Wright, the legend's voice. Ian Wright has been one of the most visible and emotional figures connected to this Arsenal title win. His reaction, captured while he was celebrating with fans, says everything about what this moment means to people who have devoted their lives to this football club. Wright said, "It has just been so tough the last 3 years, and to finally do it, honestly, what can I say? It is amazing." He then added, "This club deserves it. Our fans deserve it, all around the world and everybody. We deserve this, man." Let me give you my honest take on this. The phrase that stands out to me is the last 3 years have been so tough. Wright is not talking about the 22 years of waiting in general. He is specifically referencing the recent years when Arsenal came so close, when the pain was most acute, when it felt like this team was capable but somehow unable to cross the finishing line. The last 3 years were the hardest because the expectation was highest. And now, standing among the fans in an Arsenal shirt, Wright is a man completely overwhelmed by a happiness that has been a long time coming. When a player of his stature and history with the club reacts with that level of raw emotion, it validates what this moment truly means. Thierry Henry's full analysis. Thierry Henry gave what I consider to be the most comprehensive and powerful external analysis of this Arsenal title win. And because Henry's words deserve to be heard with full clarity, I want to go through his statement carefully. Henry said that Arsenal did not get lucky. They took the crown from Manchester City. He drew a distinction between those two things, noting that for 4 years, everyone in England acted like the Premier League belonged to Manchester City permanently. Arsenal changed that. We referenced the point this season when Arsenal lost at the Etihad and how instantly the media buried them. Pundits said the race was over, rivals celebrated, but Henry said champions do not panic after one defeat, weak teams do, and this Arsenal side responded like real winners. Now, here is what this really means. Henry then made a point that is one of the sharpest observations anyone has made about this title. He said that the Manchester City fear factor is gone. Teams go to the Etihad now believing they can survive. And he said Arsenal smelled that weakness before anyone else. He addressed the mentality criticism that has followed Arsenal for years. The banter club label, the soft label, the bottle jobs, all of it. And his response was simply this. The same club people laughed at just dethroned the most dominant English side of the modern era. His final words deserve to be spoken clearly. He said Arsenal did not back into the title. They earned it. And the funniest thing, the tears from rival fans have only just started. Henry's analysis is important because it comes from someone who understands the weight of Arsenal history at the deepest level. He was part of the last great Arsenal era. He knows what it takes to dominate English football, and his verdict is unequivocal. This Arsenal title was earned, it was deserved, and it signals something bigger and longer term than a single championship. Wayne Rooney's emotional tribute. Wayne Rooney is not an Arsenal man. He spent his career as one of Arsenal's greatest rivals, and yet his tribute to this Arsenal title win was one of the most emotionally honest pieces of football commentary I have seen in a long time. He described feeling genuinely emotional for this Arsenal team. He referenced every insult that has been thrown at them: soft, fragile, bottlers. Show some mentality, build some muscle. They are not built for the big moments. And then Rooney asked a series of pointed questions. Where is the person calling them mentality lacking now? Where is the man mocking them with the bottle gesture? Now, I cannot see them. He acknowledged that Arsenal did this in one of the toughest Premier League campaigns he can remember. He praised Arteta specifically, saying he rebuilt this club step by step and got people believing again. And then his closing line, which I want you to hear properly, he said, "I can already see Arsenal fans becoming the loudest people on earth for the next 20 years. And honestly, fair enough, they have suffered enough. Congratulations to Arsenal Football Club." Let me put this in plain terms for you. When Wayne Rooney, a man whose career was largely defined by competing against Arsenal, says congratulations with that level of genuine feeling, it tells you how significant this title win is in the broader history of English football. This was not a polite formality from Rooney. That was genuine respect from a genuine rival, and that matters. Arsene Wenger and the passing of the torch. BBC Sport posted what might have been the most emotionally loaded image of the entire night. A quote from Arsene Wenger, the man who was the most recent title-winning Arsenal manager before tonight. Until tonight, Wenger's message was short. It was just 5 words, but those 5 words carried the weight of everything. He said, "Now go on and enjoy every moment. Here is how I see this. Wenger was Arsenal's last champion. For 22 years, he held that distinction. And on this night, Mikel Arteta took that title and added his name to the list of Arsenal managers who have won the Premier League." Wenger's message is a blessing from one chapter to the next, from the Invincibles era to this new era, from Highbury to the Emirates, from 2004 to 2026. The fact that Wenger chose to make it about enjoyment, about the moment, about the experience, rather than about tactics or analysis or legacy, tells you something about what football means at its deepest level. He wants this group of players and supporters to feel every second of what they have earned. That is a generous and beautiful message from a football legend. Erling Haaland and the Norwegian connection. Erling Haaland's reaction deserves specific attention because of what he chose to focus on. After Manchester City lost at Bournemouth and handed Arsenal the title, Haaland was interviewed. And rather than focusing purely on Manchester City's disappointment, he spoke directly about Martin Ødegaard. Haaland said that when you get the most points, you deserve to win the league. So congratulations to Martin Ødegaard. He then said, "Ødegaard deserves this trophy." And he added, "It will be tough to see him lift the trophy, but it is fantastic when a Norwegian lifts the Premier League trophy." Now, here is the part most people are missing in this reaction. 2 of Norway's greatest current footballers were on opposite sides of this title race. Haaland with Manchester City, Ødegaard with Arsenal. And when it ended, Haaland chose to celebrate his fellow Norwegians' achievement. He acknowledged the hurt for Manchester City, using the phrase, "not good enough for us," but he led with respect and genuine admiration for what Ødegaard and Arsenal achieved. That is the sportsmanship of a player who understands football at a high level. And it makes the rivalry between these 2 players and their clubs richer and more compelling for next season. Pep Guardiola and his future. Now, there is a separate but connected story that emerged on this night that has significant implications for English football going forward. Pep Guardiola spoke publicly about his future at Manchester City. His words were carefully chosen. He said the first person he needs to talk to is his chairman. He said they agreed to sit down and discuss when the season finishes. He confirmed that he has 1 more year remaining on his contract. But he declined to announce his decision, saying clearly that he will not reveal it until after speaking to his chairman, his players and his staff. He also made a point of saying that throughout the season, regardless of what competition Manchester City were in, the only thing in his mind was to win. He said he is the happiest man on the planet to be at Manchester City, calling the club extraordinary. Let me walk you through this step by step, because Guardiola's future is genuinely uncertain. He has not committed to staying. He has not announced he is leaving. What he has done is delay the decision properly, which is the right approach. But the fact that this conversation is happening at all, at the precise moment when Arsenal have just won the Premier League and are in a Champions League final, adds a fascinating dimension to the near-term future of English football. If Guardiola leaves Manchester City, the balance of power in the Premier League shifts even further in Arsenal's direction. If he stays, the challenge remains significant. Either way, the conversation around his future adds enormous context to Arsenal's achievement tonight. Arteta at home with his family. I want to end this analysis with perhaps the quietest and most human detail of this entire night, because sometimes the biggest moments are felt most powerfully in the smallest settings. Mikel Arteta was at home tonight. He watched Arsenal secure a Premier League title after 22 years, surrounded by his family. Let me put this in plain terms for you. That is the detail I want every Arsenal supporter to hold on to. The man who rebuilt this club, who took over at a point of genuine difficulty, who was mocked and questioned and doubted and scrutinised at every turn. He watched the moment of confirmation with the people closest to him, not in a stadium, not surrounded by cameras and microphones, at home with his family. The people who show up when it is not easy. The people who see the vision when no one else does. That is who was there with Arteta when Arsenal became champions. This is why football matters. Not just the tactics and the transfers and the table positions. The human beings at the centre of it. The manager who refused to give up on his project. The players who believed in the process. The supporters who waited 22 years and never stopped caring. Arsenal are Premier League champions, and Mikel Arteta watched it happen at home, exactly where he deserved to be. This has been one of the great nights in Arsenal Football Club's history, and this has been Melissa, Arsenal analyst's full breakdown of every story, every reaction, every significant detail from the night Arsenal became champions. The Premier League trophy is coming to North London. The Champions League final against Paris Saint-Germain is on May 30th. And the parade is set for May 31st, with the possibility that Arsenal could celebrate not one, but two of the biggest trophies in European football on the same morning. Carlo Ancelotti said back in December of 2025 that Arsenal would win the Premier League. Tonight, he was proven right. If you want to be here for every step of what comes next, subscribe to this channel, hit the notification bell, and join the community that analyses this club with the seriousness and depth it deserves. 22 years, they are not laughing anymore. Thank you for watching.